This is Mrs. Reason here with a video on multiplying and dividing rational expressions. It's first important to know the steps to simplifying a rational expression. Step 1 is to factor the numerator and denominator. Step 2 is to cancel any common factors. You can see in the first example we have 15 over 65. We factored the numerator into 3 times 5, and we factored the denominator into 13 times 5. Notice the 5's cancel, simplifying your fraction to 3/13. The same applies for simplifying rational expressions. Look at this example. In my numerator, I have 4 times the quantity x plus 3. In the denominator, I have the expressions x minus 5 times x plus 3. The factors of x plus 3 cancel, leaving you with a simplified rational expression. Here's how you would simplify this rational expression. I'm first going to factor the numerator. Then I'm going to factor the denominator. Then I'm going to cancel any common factors they have. Leaving me with my final answer, which is considered simplified. Let's work these practice problems together. I'll do the first 3, and you can do the last 3. In the first problem, do you see any factors that can cancel? The x plus 1 factors cancel in both the numerator and denominator, leaving you with 2 over x plus 3. In the second example, I need to factor the numerator. Do you see how to do it? A 20 would factor out of the numerator. And a 10 would factor out of the denominator. "20 and 10 can be reduced by canceling, leaving you with your final answer. In problem number 3, there's nothing I can do. Therefore, we say the expression is already simplified. You try number 4. Did you see the numerator was already factored? Factoring the denominator looks like this. These cancel, leaving you with your simplified rational expression. Do number 5 and 6 on your own. Pause the video and come back. Here's what 5 and 6 should look like. Now that we know how to simplify rational expressions, we can multiply rational expressions. We'll start with multiplying rational expressions where we are multiplying monomials. Step 1 is to multiply the numerator. Step 2 is to multiply the denominators. Step 3 is to cancel common factors to simplify. Notice the example. Let's do example 3 together. I have one rational expression times another rational expression. Step 1 is to multiply the numerators together. Step 2 is to multiply the denominators together. Step 3 is to cancel common factors using your exponent rules. That means my x in the denominator cancels one of the x's in the numerator. 3 of my y's in the denominator cancel 3 of the y's in the numerator, leaving you with just one y. And 56 divides by 8, leaving you with 7. Simplified, your final answer is 7 x to the 6th power times y to the 1st power. Now we can multiply rational expressions where the numerators and denominators are made up of binomials or trinomials. Your steps are 1. Factor the numerators. 2. Factor the denominators. 3. Cancel any common factors. Looking at example 4, we will start with this numerator. It factors to 3x times 1 minus x. The other numerator factors to x plus 5 and x minus 4. Now let's move to the denominators. This factors to x plus 5 and x minus 1. And the other denominator is already simplified. I have factors in common that can cancel. X plus 5's cancel. This 3x in the numerator cancels that 3x in the denominator. This leaves me with 1 minus x times x minus 4 over x minus 1 in the denominator. You may notice that this factor and that factor look similar. They're the same terms, but the signs are different. We can take care of this. All we need to do is factor out a negative 1 in that numerator. So once I do that, I would end up with that becoming negative 1 plus x. The signs just change. And I'll write everything else back down. Now look what you see. This term and that term are really the same. I could switch the order here of the x and the negative 1 and these would be identical. And they cancel. So your final answer for this problem is negative 1 times x minus 4. You try these two problems. Pause the video and come back when you're done to check your answers. Here's what the final answers should look like. Dividing rational expressions is very similar to multiplying them. The only difference is your first step is to multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. The second step is still to factor the numerators, then factor the denominators, and finally cancel common factors. Here's an example that show you what we're talking about. Looking at example 6, let's multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. That looks like this. It's important to notice the division sign has become a multiplication symbol, and we have flipped the second fraction. Step 2 is to factor the numerators. This numerator is already factored. The second numerator can factor into x minus 6 times x minus 5. This denominator has a common factor of 2. And the other denominator has a common factor of x. Now we can cancel any common factors that we see. This leaves you with 7/2 being the simplification of this division problem. Example 7 is a situation that you may see. The second fraction you need to realize is really over the number 1. I will multiply it by the reciprocal. Now I will factor any numerators or denominators that can be factored. Cancel any common factors. This leaves you with the simplified fraction 2x minus 3 over 4x cubed. You try the next two problems. Pause the video and come back when you have a final answer. Here are the final answers. Remember, if you had trouble with any part of this video, you should go back to it and watch it again.